many people don't understand or appreciate history. People ask me, why is Singapore now so pro-America? I say, huh? Do you know that I personally was in the middle of big debate when we have Jimmy Carter. He and his people whack us on human rights practices. Then in the middle of the Michael Fay incident, Bill Clinton just came to office. Wow, he was tough, and I was in the middle of the Michael Fay problem too. If you understand these two episodes in our history with the United States of America, you will know that Singapore's relation with the United States have been established over the last 48 years based on ups and downs. And these days, they are more up because we have put aside all these little issues that trouble us.
So what did the Michael Fay incident do to diplomatic relations between the US and Singapore? On the surface of it, it was a straightforward case of vandalism, which carries with it a mandatory caning sentence under Singapore law. Fay petitioned the president for clemency, and then-President Bill Clinton wrote a formal letter appealing to then-President Ong Teng Cheong not to administer the sentence.
The reaction from the American society, particularly American media, was very negative because they saw this form of punishment as barbaric. And interestingly, not the entire American society was against us. One segment of the American society was actually supportive of Singapore. In particular, the law enforcement community, they applauded Singapore's decision to punish these American teenagers for misbehaving.
The Singapore government deliberated on Clinton's request and eventually reduced the caning sentence from 6 to 4 strokes. Singapore knew that there would be fallout, but decided to stick to its principles.
We did it because that was the right thing to do. It was in line with what we have been doing in Singapore, and that is we need to protect the integrity and credibility of our judicial system.
Our track record is that we may be a small country, but we can't be bullied, you see. Yeah? And we are willing to stand up even to the most powerful country in the world.
Ambassador-at-Large Chan Heng-chi was posted to the US in 1996, 2 years after the incident.
Ambassador S.R. Nathan, who had returned to Singapore and later became our president, he did tell me that it is tough. And so I had no illusions that I could turn the page immediately. It took a little longer before we could fully repair the relationship and get things working as it was before. We found it hard to get a White House meeting.
It was only in 1998 that the White House opened its doors to then Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong, 4 years after the Fay incident. Fast forward to 6th May 2003, bilateral relations had clearly turned the corner. The historic US-Singapore Free Trade Agreement was signed, making it Asia's first.
I think the United States wanted to pick Singapore as a partner because when I was in the United States, frequently I was told that Singapore is a good nation, is a great nation, is a great partner.
The story behind the USS FTA is well told. Then Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong and US President Bill Clinton met at the 2000 APEC meeting in Brunei. PM Goh invited President Clinton for a midnight game of golf. Ong Ye Kung was present at the same APEC meeting in his capacity as Director of Trade in MTI.
Leaders don't just decide to meet and play golf. A lot of work went into it, a lot of pre-agreement of what the golf game should end up with.
Ong Ye Kung was given the press release to type. President Clinton scribbled on it and made a few interesting changes, which reflected his thoughts at that time.
Years later, when you look back, this is quite prescient, because today you can't talk about trade without environment, without inclusive growth, without labor. And I think without that 2 chapters, we would not have been able to gather the congressional consensus to pass our free trade agreement. To have a free trade agreement with us is like investing in a startup, no? Hoping that it becomes a unicorn. We have to position ourselves as that startup that is worth you investing in. The only thing we bring to the table is that we are open, we are always ready to negotiate. We negotiate based on our interests, we move faster than others.
It is a narrow middle ground, a thin line that Singapore walks to make as many friends as possible and maintain good relations.
It's not right to say that Singapore has now become more pro-America. The fact is we would like to have a certain relationship with the US. And why we do this? We are sensitive of Malaysia, of Indonesia, of China, of India, of everybody. And we want to demonstrate that there is an option where we can do all this without the traditional way of either you are here with me or you are there with me. We are walking in the middle.